it's Nina from VR Focus, and I am joined by...
I'm Steve Lane. I'm a sound engineer at Grand Central Recording Studios, and I'm also technical lead at GCRS, which is a department of Grand Central that focuses on VR audio.
So, I am here in this incredible studio that is specifically made for virtual reality.
It is indeed.
And as you can tell, we've got lots of headsets here that you guys have, I guess, been using.
Yeah, we tried to be able to work in every medium and every format, so we have been lucky enough to get all the different headsets to play around with, which is lots of fun.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about who you guys are and why you guys have decided to make a special room specifically for virtual reality.
Okay, so we're a post-production company who works in advertising. We've been around for 20 plus years, and we found over the last couple of years a lot of the clients that we work with started to delve and move into experimenting with VR, 360 audio and true VR as well. So we went along with them for the journey. 3D audio is something we've been passionate about for many years as a company, but there's never really been an application for it until VR came along. So we're trying to approach it from coming from a sound design background, working with our skills as sound designers and implementing that into the VR world. We found that the workflow wasn't quite ideal for working in VR. There wasn't really the tools available, so...
Like, why was it difficult?
Just because the kind of software that we were running and the rooms themselves weren't set up for... I mean, you had 5.1 and things like that for slightly, enhanced surround, but there was nothing really in place for true ambisonic audio, which is essentially what ends up in VR. So the idea was to build a room that had a third order ambisonics, which is X amount of speakers. In this case, we have 56 in total, to allow us to mix in an ambisonic format, which then we can hear truly what's going to end up in a VR experience.
So I guess the difference here would be, one, there's space that you can sit in with your client, and instead of, I guess, using headphones. Yeah,
we found a lot of the time that when we were previously working in the stereo studio that I would do the work. I'd be working in headphones a lot of the time, which is quite isolationist when you have people in the room with you. And also from a checking back and approval point of view, I'd have to the headset on with headphones on, do some work, pass it to person one, and then they'd do a little check. Person two would do a check, and the workflow wasn't ideal for it at all, and it was taking far too much time. The creative process was just being slowed down massively. So by having a room like this where everyone can be in the room at the same time, experience the audio as it's going to end up, is fundamental to a good workflow. And the way we have it working is that I can sit with a headset on and have the image projected onto the screen, and as I look around, the sound field will rotate around the room. So what people are seeing on the screen, they're also hearing mirrored in the speakers as well.
Wait, so what you see in here, like, so if you look a specific way, that will be reflected in the
Exactly
speakers?
right, yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm looking straight ahead and then I turn 90 degrees to the left, this sound field will go with it. Depending on what's on the screen, the audio will be relative to that as well. It's also a Dolby Atmos theatrical license suite as well. Basically, when we set about building it, we wanted to make sure that it could incorporate multiple formats. So although it's been built from the ground up to have a third order ambisonic setup, it can also do Dolby Atmos, and there's also enough speakers where we could do Aura 3D or 11.1 or 22.1 if we wanted to. It's fully customizable as we see more and more people move into VR, but also installations as well, like virtual reality and rides and all those types of things. The ability to be able to customize the speaker setup based on the project you're working on is going to be amazingly useful in the future for sure.
Well, how did you guys decide to take virtual reality seriously and dedicate a space for it?
Sure. I mean, as a company, we've always been really aggressive with pushing what can and can't be done with audio. We really feel that it's a market which is going to become hugely popular in the future. We're working on various VR projects, 360 videos, but also sound designing for true VR as well. And what we ended up doing was giving lots of people the audio sound design, and then they did the implementation themselves, and it wouldn't turn out quite what we'd expected. So we've also gone down the route of doing not only the sound design but the implementation into the engine as well. So really we needed an area where myself, who can design the sound, and our technical assistant can sit there and we work off each other. She'll do the coding and the implementation into the blueprints, or depending on what you're doing. And to have a workstation to one side, a desk available to do the sound design, and then the speakers all around you to understand how it's going to fit within the environment is really useful from a workflow point of view.
From your experience of trying out virtual reality, have you seen sound being fully sort of made use of?
I think we've got to separate it from the game world a little bit, because game world have been doing awesome sound for a very long time. But from a VR side, I count on my hand probably good experiences that use the sound properly, or even have good sound. There's lots of stuff out there where the sound is in there and it does a job, but what we're trying to achieve is true immersion, get an emotional reaction from people when they're doing VR. And until you can make the sound match the visuals to a degree which is believable, I just think you're never going to quite get there. But there's also great other usages of sound within VR, and from a creative storytelling point of view, being able to further the narrative, especially for people who aren't early adopters and have come to VR relatively late. They'll often put on a headset and be, wow, this looks amazing, what do I do, where do I go? And then by using sound you can lead them in a specific direction and further the storyline along. And I think that's also fundamental, because everybody's so used to consuming media where you're watching in one environment, in one setting, you're looking in one direction, that people almost aren't used to having stuff around them, and it can be quite restrictive. So to use the audio to expands people's, being able to move around is a very useful tool for storytellers as well, definitely.
Are you finding now that you have lots of clients that are coming to you guys saying, I don't understand what virtual reality is, why is sound so important, and you'd have to sort of do like this is what virtual reality is, this is why sound is important. Like, how would you describe that to people who don't know about sound?
Yeah, I mean, we run like often little demos for our clients. Coming from the industry that we come from, there is interest in it, but VR is so much huger than that. There's so many applications outside of branding and advertising. I've made a little environment that people can go and interact with things. We talk about the difference between 360 and VR, and because a lot of people just see them as a blanket term, and that's not the case, especially not from an audio point of view. They work very differently. When we do 360 videos, we'll often get involved very early in the process to talk about what you can and can't do, because a lot of people are coming to the medium from a different background and kind of expect the techniques that they've used in shooting a normal film to be transferable, and they're not. They're very, very different, especially from a sound point of view, because you can't hide a boom mic on a 360 camera. You need to hide mics dotted around the room and things like that. For the last sort of 3 years, we've been focusing quite specifically, alongside our normal work, but focusing quite specifically on VR, and we've learned along the way, sometimes by trial and error, that there's certain things you can and can't do, or should and shouldn't do, and that is kind of what we talk to people about when they come in and do a demo, and also just show them some cool VR, which is always a lot of fun. So.
And I tried out a Sky virtual reality experience. Is this one of the first sort of big projects that you guys have been working on?
It was one of the first game engine based projects we've been working on. So that was from the ground up. No audio was supplied to us. We did everything, sound design, implementation, everything into it.
So what is that? What is the experience?
It's a experience for Sky, and it's a 4D experience. You didn't try the 4D. But it basically allows people to enter into different parts of the Sky channel. So you've got Sky Sports, you go in there and you can try and be a goalkeeper to save a goal. There's some F1 cars, and there's another which is the Game of Thrones experience, which is a lot of fun, where you get to see some dragons, which when I was asked if I wanted to make sound for dragons, I was like, yes, please. But that was an interesting challenge, because it's one of the first what I personally think is the first really, really good branded piece of VR content, and I think Sky and everyone involved did a really great job in making that an enjoyable and exciting and fun piece.
And that was in West London?
It was in Westfield, yeah.
Westfield. Is it going anywhere else?
I believe it will be, but I'm not 100% sure. It's only just finished there. Definitely check it out if it's near you, because it's a lot of fun, definitely.
The biggest problem that I encounter when interviewing developers is that there's so many different types of headsets, meaning they've got so many different types of software and hardware. How do you deal with working on so many different platforms?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of platforms available, and there's lots of headsets available, and there's lots of software tools available to design for them. The way that we work is we have one master suite of tools, and the guys who have developed those tools we've been working with for several years now, and have come through, we do a lot of testing for them, and very lucky to have that. And we use that as like a global toolkit, and then from that we can then decide, depending on the client or the project, itself. We can decide what we need to do afterwards to apply it to the specific platform, whether that's YouTube 360 or Facebook, or if it's a game engine thing, or if it's going on to Gear VR. You know, everything has its own little format. And again, we've done projects for all these over the last few years, and with each one you learn something new about how to implement it. And it's constantly evolving as well. Like some of the stuff we did a couple of years ago for a Natural History Museum, which was dinosaurs stomping around, which was great fun again. That was on YouTube 360. In fact, one of the first 360 videos with spatial audio. It's constantly evolving, which isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means it's getting better and better. It just means you need to be aware of it the entire time, and there's lots of different things you need to be aware of. So,
with regards to all of the different headsets, which headset do you think has the worst quality of sound?
I am not a fan of the Oculus, and also we got the audio head strap for the Vive, and I've taken the headphones off of that. I think it's a great, I think it's really clever what they've done, and the head strap itself is fantastic. And to be fair, the headphones are okay, but from when we're trying to create sound, there are certain things that the frequencies drop off and they can't handle certain frequencies. So for most of our projects, we use our own headphones, or if it's an installation somewhere, we'll be asked to suggest a set of headphones that we would use, which we did off the Sky. Especially if it's outside in a noisy environment, the leakage of audio on any of the ones that just sit on your ear is huge, so you really need some over-the-ear ones to try and take it out. But then you need to be careful with noise cancelling headphones, because that can affect frequencies and things like that. So there's a lot to do. I mean, I personally just have my own set of headphones that I bought about 3 years ago for 60 quid that I still use because I just know how they sound. I think there's a long way to go, but I'm only approaching that from a pure audio point of view. From a usability point of view, what the Oculus does and what the Vive does with the head strap now is really useful for most users.
Where do you see sort of headset manufacturers going with regards to how important do you think they need to see sound?
Well, I think most of them understand that it's hugely important, and I guess they need to approach it from a practicality point of view, but I would like to see more customizable options. With the Vive, it's quite difficult to get them off. It'd be nice if you could just take them off and then put on a different set for depending on what your environment or what you're trying to achieve. But we tend to try and always mix for the lowest common denominator, which means that I'll often sit there with iPhone headphones in. Not that they're terrible, they're actually okay for what they are size-wise, but a lot of people will listen to it on iPhone headphones. Not everybody will have access to big expensive headphones that we tend to mix on here. So we need to make sure that, yes, exactly, that everybody who are using those is still getting as good as experience as possible.
Thank you so much for
It's a pleasure.
No
problem at all.
Is there a website that we can go to, or a place that clients can go to work together with you?
So we're GCRS.com is our main website, and on there you'll find a link to our VR section, and there's some examples of work and a bit more information about what it is that we do.
So you heard the man. Go over to the website, and obviously sound is essential for virtual reality, and head over to vrfocus.com if you want to find out more.